Hey guys, this is the real Pete Kirkwood, and I thought I'd share a story with you. Once upon a time, there was a little village. It wasn't too small a village. It was a reasonable sized port town that it's nestled in the end of a beautiful bay with beautiful beaches right out to a headland. And one day, this village was awarded with an honour. The kingdom chose it to build a ship. It was a big deal. The ship was named the Lady Chelsea. And it was a honour, a spiritual successor to the king's grandmother who'd passed away. And in his honour, he commissioned this ship to sail the seas and to explore the world and to see what new wonders were to be found in the spirit of the Lady Chelsea, his great-grandmother. She was a magnificent woman, so he commissioned a magnificent ship to be built. And in this small little port town, things began to change. This ship began to be built. It created a bustle in the town. It created a new life and a new energy. And there was a little girl who was about 5 years old when this started happening. And she was amazed by this wondrous ship that was being built. And as she grew older, the ship grew larger, grew bigger, slowly began to come together. And if you wanted to talk to this little girl, she would tell you all about this ship. She knew everything. She was fascinated by it. She'd spoken to everyone and she'd ferreted out all the information she possibly could, because this ship to her was the Lady Chelsea, was a magnificent, grand woman who would travel the world and sail the seas, and this girl loved this ship. And the years went on, and she started to grow up. She still had a sharp mind about her. She knew everything about that ship, and she started to grow beautiful herself in turn. It wasn't too long before the boys of the town began to take a notice in this girl as well as this magnificent ship. And she quickly found that all the boys who were near to the ship, the shipwrights, the shipbuilders, the deckhands, the people who bought labour and supplies, they would all happily talk to her, but they always wanted something back. She was no fool. She knew her worth, and she wasn't about to trade herself and her dignity away just to get a little bit closer to the ship. So she started to push people away a bit. It never changed how much she loved that ship, but she started to get a little bit sick of the people involved in it. Didn't stop her growing up to be a very intelligent woman. She ended up making her way into the councils and the ruling committees, and became a very wise woman with regards to the logistics and the administration of this shipbuilding project. Because nothing had ever been seen like this ship before in this kingdom. It was grand, it was magnificent. Day by day, it grew closer to finishing. This grand galleon, this grand, beautiful bird, beautiful fish of the seas, to fly and swim out across those oceans and explore the wide world. It became more magnificent and the stories became more grand, and the ship hadn't even been finished. But the day drew ever closer. And one day, it was almost complete. It was due to set sail in 2 days. And our girl, now fully grown, found herself standing on a balcony, looking out across the harbour at the ship almost ready to sail down in the bay below. And she whispered to herself, she said, Lady Chelsea, how I envy thee, for you are free to sail across the sea. Unlike me, it's my destiny to never sail across the sea or be free. I will live here for eternity. And she was in love with that ship, and she was sad. And as the emotion gripped her in that moment, a voice said quietly from behind, "That was beautiful." Startled, she turned around, and there was a man standing there. He'd been looking out over the balcony and out over the ship as well at this random spot and near up high in the town, looking down over the bay, and she hadn't noticed him. She hadn't heard him. She was startled. She didn't know what to do. And he said, "Forgive me for my intrusion. My name is Captain Raleigh. I'm the captain of that ship, and I've just come into town. I'll be leaving in 2 days. Although I know not who you are, I apologize for startling you, but I could not help but overhear those wise, beautiful words of sorrow. And a voice like that, and a mind like that, belongs on a ship like the Lady Chelsea. The woman stammered and she said, "But what do you mean? I have a life here. I can't." And Captain Raleigh said, "It's your choice. I say you can. It's my ship, and I'd be honoured to have a woman of your sophistication aboard. It sets sail at noon, day after tomorrow. I'm sure I'll see you aboard. Is it what you want?" She said, "But of course." I said, "Well, then it's up to you, isn't it?" And Captain Raleigh walked away, and our woman was left standing there. All of a sudden, this dream that she had never dared to believe that she could actually get close to the ship was upon her. What would she do? She thought about it. She had a life, and she had friends, and she had family, and she'd built all of this life. She couldn't just walk away. She couldn't just go onto this ship and sail off into the distance with this Captain Raleigh, who she'd never met before, this man chosen by the king to take this wondrous ship on this voyage. But could she? She wasn't sure. She went home. She thought about it. No one could quite engage her in a conversation, for this dilemma went round and round in her head. And all throughout the next day, everyone noticed how quiet she was, but no one knew why. She couldn't decide. Do I go? Or do I stay? Do I get on that ship and sail off into the distance, or do I stay here where everything is? And the next day, the ship was due to set sail. A woman was standing up on the balcony, overlooking the docks. And she could see, as the clock approached, people bustling around. She noticed a figure standing tall on the back of the ship. She thought, that's probably Captain Raleigh. It looked like him. She couldn't quite make it out from this distance, but it would make sense. And he paced back and forth, right up to the end, right up to the gangplank. There were terse words, and all of a sudden the gangplank was cast away. The ship began to set sail. And she ran. She ran all the way down the hill. And she ran past houses and people who recognised her, but they had no idea what was going on. And she ran all the way to the docks, all the way to where the gangplank had been dropped into the water as the ship began sailing out of the harbour. One of her friends noticed her there and said, "Oh, I thought you would have been here for sure to see the ship leave." And she said, "No, I was watching from up high on the balconies. It didn't leave dead on noon, did it?" And her friend said, "No." Captain Raleigh insisted that there was one more passenger missing. There was supposed to be a woman who was supposed to be taking a berth on the ship, but he did not know her name, and he did not know anything about her beyond what she looked like, and he said she hadn't appeared. So nobody knows who he was talking about, but she didn't turn up. They waited till about 3 minutes passed, and then the ship set sail. And at this, our woman broke down into tears. Her friend said, there, don't worry about it. It's a success. You worked so hard to make sure this ship left this port. You've been involved in the committees all your life. I've known you as my friend, and what's there to cry about? You've achieved your greatest triumph. And the woman couldn't bring herself to say anything. She couldn't bear to tell her friend that she was that person who was supposed to be on that ship, and it was waiting for her, and she didn't go. She just could see the ship slowly getting smaller and smaller in the distance as it slowly sailed between the two headlands, off out into the open sea. She was beside herself that night. She didn't know how to deal with it. The chance, the opportunity, it was gone. She had a window and she didn't take it. And she questioned herself. Did she do the right thing? Did she not? And she wondered if the ship would come back and she would get another chance. And the next day, it was the same. And the day after that, it was the same as well. The day after that, it was a little bit easier, but it hadn't changed. Day after day, night after night, she thought about the Lady Chelsea and where she might be with Captain Raleigh, sailing across the seas on an adventure that she hadn't grabbed onto when it was right in front of her. And one day, she realised that it was never going to happen. He was never going to come back to port. The ship would never dock again, and she would never see the ship again. She would only ever see the Lady Chelsea in her dreams. And behind her eyelids, in every moment of every day, that she wasn't there, that she was stuck in a town with a small boat building industry, left to scrabble amongst the remains of what was left after the grand ship had sailed and taken its soul and her purpose away with it. She hadn't embarked for fear of how she'd been treated by so many people. Every time she tried to go after what she wanted, the wrong people had treated her badly, and one day, when it was the right time, she'd hesitated. She'd missed out. And she lived unhappily ever after. The real Pete Kirkwood. Think about that when you're looking at your dreams.